And welcome to Weekly Open. I'm Brian. We've got everybody on the line today, Don and Cred. Thanks for joining us. Hey, before we even get to the show, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to do it today. Go ahead and subscribe so that you get updates for when we go on air, because this is important content, obviously. Cred, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. Here to provide some important content. I mean, that's news to me, but I'll take your word for it. How are you?
I just had to up the ante. They have no reason to subscribe yet because they haven't watched through the show, so I have to give them something,
That's
a hint
true.
of the value that's going to come to them. Don, how's it going?
Good. I'm just enjoying the weather. Basically, it's been nice.
Oh no, you're back on vacation.
I'm back on vacation. Yes.
Oh god, that means we're totally
Time to
screwed.
chop. Yeah.
All right, well, show's over. We know the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, in the last week, you know, people are making extremely dumb bets that Bitcoin's going to be $1 million. Balaji, how do you pronounce it?
I'd guess it's Balaji, but I don't know.
Okay.
I'd be super surprised if the J is a H sound, though.
Balaji.
Yeah,
Well,
that sounds wrong. I think it's Balaji.
Yeah, I think so too.
Nice that we fixated on the important part of the point you're making.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we all know, no matter what it is, I'll pronounce it right. So
yes, clearly, Mr. Multicultural Alabama man.
That's exactly right. All right, so I don't remember where we left off last week. I think we were all appropriately semi-bullish. And
I was just like, I don't know. You guys were great.
Yeah,
so someone had to knock the show down a peg, you know.
Yeah, we bet on up, and we're up, 10-12% since then. So obviously we're brilliant. Now we're sitting here 27-28K. There's more talk about potential bank failures. Multiple. What was that news last night? Multiple central banks came together to make a statement. I'm like, is that ever good? It seems like it's never good. Somebody's like, well, they did it in 2020, 2007, and I'm like, okay,
that's all my favorite years.
Yeah, all my favorite years. Cred, do you want to give us a lay of the land? What did we do in the last week?
I mean, we broke out, right? That's kind of the main thing. That's the epicenter of all the current price action prognostications, if I may. And multi-week breakouts or breakouts from multi-week, multi-month, in this case, consolidations tend to be a big deal in BTC. They don't tend to come back and retest in particularly generous terms when it comes to the especially if they're trend forming breakouts. They don't do that. If you take even the sort of cursory glance, the 6K break didn't really give you much as far as a retest goes. The ultimate reclaim of 6K on the way up, I wouldn't classify any of this as a useful retest. It chopped under the level and then just went. The big sort of 12K breakout didn't give you much in the form of a retest, and that was trend forming. The 30K breakdown, I mean, this is charitable at most, but given the magnitude of the move that followed, that didn't give you the type of retest, sort of very orderly and technical. And so one of the arguments floating around at the moment is that this is a comparable structure to all the other preceding trend forming breakouts. And so expecting it to come back and retest doesn't make sense. And if it does, that's actually a red flag, if anything. So instead, at most, you want just, you'll get like a slowdown or something, some period of sideways, or if it's a real trend forming breakout, number go up and just more candles of the same color, for lack of a better term. So I think that's sort of what we're dealing with at the moment.
Just based off of what you see, Cred, is there a not all the way retest level that you think could be retested or could be brought back to without being overly concerning? Like I look at like 25.3, 25.4, something like that.
I think at this point, if you have a weekly potentially trend forming breakout, you have to look at lower time frames to get a sense of candle structure. Either that or faster moving averages, which I'm not particularly fond of, as in I don't have the expertise, if you will, to use them. So for me, at the earliest, in terms of what we have right now, it would be some version of this daily cluster, or in the 26s, for lack of a better term, or you'd want just some period of consolidation to build you some structure and then use that. But in terms of pullback levels right now, really anything that at a stretch, maybe just under 26s. That's already getting a bit close to comfort. But you want to see this kind of impulse consolidate type of structure on
Yeah.
trend forming breakouts rather than breakout. And then the first thing we're going to do is just, retrace the whole thing.
Go give everybody an option to get back in at the perfect spot.
Yes, exactly. So the way I kind of look at the way I remind myself to look at these things is that if you're potentially dealing with a trend forming breakout, then consolidations are pullbacks. It's like that. It sort of changes the bar for what qualifies as a pullback. And instead of just like a literal pullback straight to the level, sort of baby pips, CryptoCred, TA LARP course style, you have to settle for less ideal variants of that, which tend to be these cluster structures, lower time frame ranges, and what have you.
Don, how are you feeling about this breakout?
I mean, I don't even know what a pullback is. No, I mean, I think it's going to be up only. And like the pullbacks we're going to get are going to come in from higher. Like I could see a pullback from 35 to 27. That would make sense to me. But I'm not really in the camp of, like, I agree completely with Cred. Like, I don't think you're going to get a retest of 25. I'd be surprised if you're going to get anything close to that. Yeah, if we do get it, it'd be a bearish sign more so than anything else. I mean, just look at that monthly. That's a breakout, and you don't want to retrace that green candle, right? The moment we retrace that green candle, it looks like complete shit. So I don't think we will. This looks genuine.
Genuine.
Oh, I hate that word.
I believe Genuine is the artist.
Oh, well, I'll take it. Genuine. It looks like a genuine breakout to me. So I'm just going to be all gas, no brakes, and keep all the positions that I have, especially the Bitcoin ones, and hope for moon. And as it looks right now, I think that's just kind of the smartest thing to do, just given that we broke out of the monthly range, we broke out of a weekly range. The daily has just been up only with like not just a little bit, but it's been like 10% dailies in a row, like a couple times in a row. I want to see that kind of explode one time where it goes up like 20, 30, 40% in a day before I kind of call up like a top or anything. Unless this is just like garbage bearish action and we do go back to 25, but then I'm going to turn bearish. So I'm bull until we kind of lose 25K. And I don't really see a reason to take profit anywhere close to where we are right now, just given that if you turn on the monthly, there's literally nothing between here and 35K. And if you look on the weekly, there's nothing between here and 32, 33, 34. So, I mean, if I wanted to take profit somewhere, it'd be around 34 maybe. But yeah, not before. I'd rather just hold.
This man won't even sell on the 33K meme. He's waiting for 34. How greedy. An extra 3%.
No. I'm probably not going to sell at 34 at all, is what I'm saying.
Oh, I see. Just wow. I mean, Don's in full up only mode. I love it. I'm just gonna do my prerequisite. It'd be a shame if I didn't on the time we break out from it. We talked about multi-week testing the 200-week moving average and also being completely aligned with the horizontal levels around 25. And call me a boomer, but I think that's it helped with the justification for the impulse. And yeah, I think we could get that to the way I look at it, at least if it was very quick, kind of like what we talked about with that weekly down to sub 20. If it's very quick, we could get that 25.5-ish range, but it shouldn't last more than 30 minutes.
Oh yeah, that obviously, like, I think quick wicks are always allowed in these kind of trends. It's just like the moment you start closing is where you get problems, right?
Oh yeah, if the weekly closed at that level, I would consider it like a pretty crappy breakout. You don't want the whole week to just retrace half that candle and not have any energy there at the end. I see where you're on the daily. You could even get a little steeper based on, I don't know, the way that I'm looking at it, but I just don't think I agree with y'all in the sense of these things. You should have people consistently like ready to FOMO in at these levels. But yeah, I'm a little concerned. We all pretty much agree. that dip should be bought here. That said, I think there's a lot of different conceptions of what our targets are. You know, Don's version of up only is probably not the same thing as Balaji's $1 million BTC in 90 days.
We're not gonna go to $1 million. That's just complete horse shit. And I think he knows it too. Like,
He
it's
does,
just
but
complete bullshit.
what I don't understand, and this is just a little soapbox moment here, is like, why do we give someone the benefit of the doubt and the press if we know the only reason they're doing it is for the press? Like, it's weak, you know, like do better marketing. Tell me you did something that's like halfway sophisticated versus just pissing $2 million down the drain to make a point. Like, I don't respect that hustle. And yet the world gives him tons of credit for his horribly formed bet. And we're like, well, just think of it for what it is, as an ad spend. And I'm like, that just pisses me off.
It pisses me off that I didn't get the action.
Oh man, that's funny.
I know. It's like,
dude who just, yeah. I mean, like, if you had to steel man the argument, it would be some version of this is a deliberately outrageous way to bring attention to the narrative of Bitcoin being a sort of banking sector systemic stress hedge, given its recent performance. And if you want to get more attention, you're gonna have to, you know, the only mechanism he has available, you know, persuasive arguments and threads and Michael Saylor, Cyber Hornet stuff isn't going to cut it. If you throw some big money at it, that'll get the normies stirring. So
yeah, but make a better bet. Like, you just sound like an idiot when the bet is structurally idiotic. Like, it is an idiotic bet.
But it would get less attention, right? Because part of what brings the attention is the absurdity of the bet itself. If he had structured it in some sophisticated options 500 IQ way, then we wouldn't be talking about it, presumably. So it's a necessary evil to structure it in a moronic way in order to reach the necessary sort of attention amount that he's going for. You can't have one without the other.
Maybe I take the general public's intelligence for granted, because I think you could make a call for $1 million Bitcoin and like structure things in a better way. Like, remember when Ari bought $50,000 calls in December 2017, and people, like, he got a lot of press for that in a negative way, and that was actually a reasonably constructed bet, because he also took money off the table. But I don't know. I just feel like there was a better way to do it than what he did. And you know it when like everyone in the world with one Bitcoin is wanting the action. I saw somebody that's like, I'll give you, I'll put up 4 Bitcoin for this. And, you know, it only has to go to 250K. And it's like, well, of course you would, because it's the dumbest bet of all time. Like, it's so easy to hedge out for the other side, not even just hedge out. It's a terrible way for him to get optionality. I did
what if though, Ledger? What if?
Yeah, but that's why it's so stupid. I hate that. Like, don't reason yourself as this like rational, you know, worldview person and your books about your utopias, and then make a bet that's so freaking stupid as that. Like, it just makes me discount him all across the board. So sorry, buddy. I think your bet achieved attention and lowered my respect for you. So
I'm sure he's devastated.
He's devastated. He just doesn't know what to do with himself now. He's so upset.
Well, look, I have a PhD in maths, which I don't tend to flex particularly often.
But right now,
relatable. But if you think about it, it's a 50-50 bet, because he's either right or he's wrong. Okay.
Oh my God.
Even if he's halfway right, BTC goes to 500K. That's pretty compelling evidence. I don't know what you think. Maybe you don't understand the maths.
A 50-50 bet.
Yeah, he's either right or he's wrong. How is it not 50-50?
Yeah. Today we learned the difference between binary and even odds. All right, great. All right, so where do we think the price is actually going to go? Top end of the
midwit angry AF. Sorry,
yeah. It's like, put me on the top of the freaking bell curve there. All right, so Don is bullish to somewhere higher. Craig, do you have a personal opinion about where you would be interested in profit taking if you consider like spot positioning, not derivatives? If you're just looking at higher time frame resistance on here.
Well, I think you need profit in order to be able to take it, Ledger. So you're asking me a very deep hypothetical here. I'll wrangle my mind and try to come up with an answer. the best I can do is, well, I've got two considerations. One is in general, even with these higher time frame ranges, like level to level still makes sense. And assuming stuff is broken, like basically assuming support is support until proven otherwise, breakout is a breakout until proven otherwise, resistance is resistance until proven otherwise, all of that just seems to make sense. I don't like to make logical leaps beyond that. So on the monthly and weekly, there's just a bunch of confluence around sort of the weekly range low and the monthly range low, 32, 35. So that's the first trouble area where I think, okay, we've got some real higher time frame structure here. Don's going to flip flop and sell and then rebuy and do some crazy stuff. So that's like a serious area to consider. In general, I'm not a huge fan of fading the monthly time frame, and that's where that starts to kick in. I know some people have the wicks here, but the candle bodies on the monthly I think are just better, for lack of a better term. So yeah, 30-ish. Whether that's 31, 30 round number, 32, 34 monthly, 30-ish makes sense. The outlier, insane Don owns the world scenario is if 30K basically turns into 6K, where it's this omega scary resistance. Oh my God, we're all going to die. And then it does nothing. That's a consideration to have in mind. I don't know what the probability of that is. I'm sure, I'll have views if and when we get there. But sort of at face value, that's a spot I wouldn't ignore, to say the very least, as far as resistance and other levels and so on and so forth. But it is a lot lower than 1 million. So
it is
maybe
low.
I'm not thoughtful enough.
You're too bearish.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like 30K is not quite as clean of a level as 6K was, just because of how many times 6K itself was tested late in the bear. Whereas this in this scenario, we just melted right through 30K once it finally tested. It was mid-cycle, if you will, or like late cycle when we actually treated 30K as a support zone. But we've only treated it as resistance once, and we blew right through it. There in the middle part of your line in mid 2022. Yeah, so I don't know where the clean resistance area is personally. So I don't know that if it's a blast off moment, kind of the way that 6K was, or if it's more of a a churn through it. People that are happy to take their 2x on the year or something like that, or back to break even from when they bought before. Although nobody owned Bitcoin anyway, so maybe there's
Michael
more.
Saylor included at 30K, right?
Yeah, that's his break even.
We're reaching Saylor break even point.
Saylor break even is a solid resistance. I like that narrative resistance better than the line itself.
I mean, he's going to start buying it, right? Presumably, he's
totally.
Shore up any more cash. He's totally going to buy more.
Yeah, that would be classic. Like he'll buy it at the all-time high or something.
Oh yeah, he's going to buy above 60K again.
yeah. So something that I'm looking at that is just as interesting to me is just what the dollar is doing. Where we talked about, I have some seriously squiggles here. We talked about both this level back down at 97, 98 as if it wants to Eiffel Tower. That'd be kind of the halfway point and potential for just long-term consolidation. I really do think this wants to go all the way back down to like 101, 101.50 before it makes the next decision, just because what we're seeing in the legacy market is pretty bad. And it just seems like a natural place to find out what kind of strength the dollar can have. There's a fiat currency problem right now. It's not restricted to the dollar. In fact, a lot of other currencies, lumped themselves right in and we're like, yeah, we're going to support dollar liquidity because this is bad. And you see a lot of like inflows on Russian banks. I don't know if y'all saw that. Gold looks incredible on a monthly chart to me. I think there's a real fleeing of, or a real fear of kind of central bank currencies right now. And I don't know, it seems likely to me that the Dixie could find its way down. You're not really seeing it in the indexes yet. If y'all have been paying attention there, like S&P is still in its no man's land. Same with the NASDAQ. IWM's at the bottom of the range, or Russell 2000 at the bottom of the range. But I don't know. I feel like this is also giving us some of that justification for Bitcoin. As cringy as I know some people think it is, like, people saying, oh, you're stressing Bitcoin because the legacy system's falling apart. But like, it doesn't take that much money to support that argument, right? Like price We lost Don for a second there, Cred. He's back.
Yeah,
worries.
internet
And that's why I
news
think we should
places
take him off the
never
show.
good.
Oh, no, never mind. Sorry.
Yeah.
Like price is found at the margins, and it doesn't take that many people to believe like, oh, well, I'm worried about all these legacy systems, so I'm going to go buy something else, and I have access to Bitcoin, so I'm going to buy Bitcoin. To really support at least Bitcoin's strength. It doesn't mean Bitcoin to 1 million, but like, does it really take that much for Bitcoin to be like 30K, 40K? Not really. A little bit of lack of faith and everything else can take Bitcoin to that level.
I mean, there's so much money in Tether alone, right?
Right.
I mean, Tether
Yeah.
has to be stored somewhere. So, like, if you have too much risk in Tether and you're like, oh, what am I going to do with it? Withdrawing to a bank doesn't sound that great. I mean, buying Bitcoin with it is pretty straightforward. Like most people in crypto don't have too big of a problem with that. So it just seems like the perfect narrative, right? Like even if you just disregard everything else, like people just rebalancing their risk could give this thing a proper spin, take it to like 30, 40, 50K, I think. Doesn't have to take any altcoins with it. This is like the kind of problem that the altcoin maxis have is that this is completely narrative driven, right? We kind of turned into gold now, and gold is going up, Bitcoin is going up, but the gold narrative isn't really anything that any other crypto coin has, right? There's no other crypto coin that has like the properties that you would want for gold, or like the narrative.
Sir,
anyway.
are you forgetting about ultrasound money?
Yeah, but I mean, each the meme, no.
Says the man who owns Litecoin.
Fair enough. No, I mean, the thing is, like, when you have basically all the altcoins rocking, right? Because they don't have this narrative, ETH is most likely gonna go along with it, especially given there's a lot of kind of like shitty things on the horizon for ETH. Basically, I mean, you have a lot of let's say lawsuits coming, just on all of this fallout that we've had in the last few months. And then you have the security thing where people are worried about, is ETH and security, is it not? Bitcoin's pretty straightforward, right? So if you have all the altcoins dumping and you have Bitcoin just going up, people like it. People are just gonna shift, because at the end of the day, like, this is a rally to risk off more so than anything else, and you don't necessarily want to risk off into ETH. You want to risk off into Bitcoin. It's always been the case.
So I agree with you in principle pretty much about everything you said. I'm a little more iffy on ETH. I'm pretty in with you on everything else looking kind of trashy in a relative sense. Like crypto and Bitcoin are not really the same thing, if you will. So it's a Bitcoin maxi type of thing to say, but you know, it's all those properties that you were just discussing. I don't need to rehash it. I agree with you on that. I find it interesting that there's some people that I really respect their acumen that are talking a completely different game. One in particular is Arthur Hayes. Have y'all seen him talking about like essentially just licking his chops for the shitcoin casino to open up? And I'm not sure if he means like in a year or like right away. I'm not quite.
To be fair, sorry for interrupting you, but he's kind of been calling for alt season like the last 10 times in the last year or so. Like, he just wants alt season. It doesn't necessarily have to mean that we're gonna get it. But I think he's actually like, if we continue rallying, we're probably gonna get it. Like, if Bitcoin goes to 50, 60K, you're probably gonna get alt season anyway.
Yeah, it's just how much do they get crushed in the meantime?
Yeah,
I can get on board with that. Like at some point, the flows transition. Like that's just a natural state of things in crypto. Is if you win a ton in one basket, then a lot of those winnings are going to roll over into another basket.
I think it's actually going to be very, very neat this time around, because it's basically right now it's like a risk off rally, as stupid as that sounds. And the moment that turns from, okay, we're risking off into Bitcoin, which is hilarious when I'm saying it, but it's just that's how it feels like to me.
It does.
And once that turns into, holy shit, Bitcoin is pumping, I want some piece of that action, then you're gonna see the altcoins go up with it. But I don't think that's necessarily here yet. I think people are still like not really looking at crypto. And that's crazy because Bitcoin's up a shitload, right? We're almost up 2x from the bottom. But I think that's going to come, like, if we manage to break above 30K and hold there, I think then you're going to get some stupid flow again where people are just kind of like, oh, I just want to have crypto. And, oh, I mean, the rally, like Bitcoin went up 2x and my favorite altcoin is up 10% from the bottom. Let me just buy that because, I mean, that seems cheap. And I think that's gonna be relatively neat this time around, just based on the fact that the narrative is so clean. I love it. Like it's the best narrative we've ever had, I think. Like just full stop.
Up in USD on altcoins has not happened in quite a while. Because when you're losing relative to Bitcoin, I mean, 2017 it was massive. Fall 2020 was probably the most recent quasi example that we had. Bitcoin went 3x while altcoins didn't. And then altcoins ran for a year straight after that. I think that was exaggerated, but yeah, I could imagine if Bitcoin goes beyond the range that I'm personally thinking, which I find it to where anything in the 30s I can believe, anything in the 40s I'm kind of like put me straight in the disbelief camp, right? Like I find anything in the 40s a bit surprising. I find all-time highs like almost impossible, which therefore immediately makes it an interesting scenario, right? Like when you think something's impossible, then how do you start imagining how could that happen? But it's hard for me to imagine all-time highs for sure. And it's really hard for me to imagine. It's fairly hard for me to imagine anything above the 30s. That said, to me, like 33 to 36 feels like a magnet.
I'm glad it's close for a change, Ledger. Because on this show we were talking about that as the omni mean reversion target for quite a while, and then the market just kept dying and people kept committing fraud and getting liquidated.
I know
that made it quite tricky. But now we're finally getting to
we feel validated levels again.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, I guess where I start to have to rethink it's probably what 44, 46, 47. Basically where we fell off in March 2022. I don't know what time frame the one where your pink line is up there. To me, like clearing that, and I think you have to be thinking about all-time high potential.
It's pretty much all-time high anyway.
But still, it's only $25,000 off of all-time high.
Yeah, but that's a 25% move after it's moved like 3x from the bottom. So
yeah, that's the funny thing about these things. It's but that's why to me it's a pretty severe. That's a pretty severe resistance in my book, at least.
For me, it's kind of like this time around, and I mean, I could be completely bull-tarding this and being like stupid, but the thing is, like the narrative that we have right now is like the first proper narrative in a long time.
This is what Bitcoin is supposed to be for.
Yes. So it's kind of hard for me to look at sells in the 30s, right? Like, why would this only go to half of the all-time high when the stage is set, right? Everything is perfect for this thing. Like, you couldn't make a better argument for Bitcoin than we have right now. And then you think, okay, if the stage is set like this and it only goes to 30 to 40K and then just kind of vanishes again, like how shit is this asset class? And I don't think it's shit. So that's why I think it's going to go higher. I think kind of like I'm just going to 50 IQ it. Like banks are fucking dying. I want to have Bitcoin. It just makes sense to me. So I'm just going to be like bull-tard until proven otherwise. And I mean, you guys know me, like I'm going to switch my stance really fast.
Oh my God, I was just going to say, man. Like I'm going to buy like all the spot I can afford at 33 or something. Like, hey, Don, we're on the same team. We'd be like, lol,
I just got
filled. Yeah, all my sell orders just got filled. I'm with Capo now, and I'll be
But yeah, I mean, I think it's something like would have to go. Like, I think it has to break to the upside first, like massively, and then kind of betray the breakout for me to switch my stance. And either that, or it has to betray this current breakout, which I don't think will happen. So for me, it just makes sense to kind of wait for that. Because if it breaks out to 30 or like almost 40K and then comes all the way back down, I mean, it's going to come back to prices where we are right now, in my opinion, if it goes worst case. So I'm just like, okay, I'm just going to give some profit back late in the rally.
I could get there. I could get there with you, Don, but I think I want to see something like we had in 2015 and 2016, like this long. This is a multi-month. I don't know how many months this is. December to May, 5 months of no new highs, but like a really nice consolidation. And I think like, okay, here's your bank failure. I don't care what the narrative is. I'm just looking at a chart, right? Like Bitcoin runs, and then the people that are kind of the last ones in end up sitting there where it's like, oh crap, everything's back to normal, narrative's gone, screw this, it's over. And then you kind of finally have your breakup from that and turns into a cycle, a proper cycle. And I just wanted to show in a weekly sense that 2017 cycle. Because I don't disbelieve that a cycle, like a big cycle, could happen because on the back of this type of central banks are screwed narrative. I just think it takes longer than like 2 weeks, like the whole or 90 days for Mr. Balaji. But if we have a 2-year, honestly, this was a 3-year cycle from the bottom, right? So 2022, 2023, 2024, like you could have a multi-year Bitcoin bull cycle and new all-time highs, 150, 200K, 250K. I don't know. Like we're just playing momentum at that point if you reach all-time highs. But where there are periods of altcoins doing well, but on the whole, like Bitcoin kind of takes over that narrative, or maybe Bitcoin and ETH. I don't know if we know how that plays out yet. I just think it's going to take some time, and like banks aren't going to 100% fail overnight. If they do, I think Bitcoin's going to get nuked and then do really well.
Yeah. I think if it actually plays out, we're fucked.
I like that. As long as the narrative is there, but if it actually happens, we're screwed.
Yes, precisely. I was going to ask about this because surely there's a meaningful distinction to be made between bank stress versus like systemic financial system collapse, right? And I think bank stress is sort of the Goldilocks zone where stuff kind of works, but it shows the fragility of the system, which makes Bitcoin attractive in relative terms, given its history as, it's gold-like properties, or it's still a risk asset for better or for worse, versus, hey guys, it's actually really bad and everyone is wrecked and the financial system's wet cardboard and the whole thing is a disaster. That seems to me less constructive from a purely trading price, whatever point of view. I think in terms of future narratives, it'd be amazing. But if the financial system goes to shit and the S&P is down, from top to bottom, like 40, 50% like in the past, I'm not terribly compelled that we fare super well. But that could be completely wrong. Maybe that's the mega decoupling, et cetera, Balaji. Give him the keys to the city event. But I'd rather stick in the Goldilocks zone where the public consciousness is made aware of the fragility of the banking system, but not enough to where everything goes to zero and collapses and, riots and so on and so forth, rather than, staring down the barrel of something a bit uglier. It needs to be bad, but not too bad, I think.
I think that's exactly right.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think that's exactly right. That's all I got to say.
I mean, I think like if we go to $1 million, we're fucked. Like then I mean, it's because the dollar is kind of like completely gone. Everything's gone if the dollar's gone, right? Like these kind of narratives, it's always funny to me. Basically, these narratives are important for price to go up. But people always take it too far. Like you don't want to see these banks fail. You don't like. I've seen people cheer on like, oh yeah, it's so nice that like these banks are getting fucked. This is going to end in pain, right? Like because a bunch of people, basically the taxpayer, has to bail them out again, and I think that's basically the end of this whole thing, right? We're all going to have to pay for it as usual, and the good thing for Bitcoin is that that's going to make people even more angry than they already are, and they're going to look for alternatives. And I think that's a good narrative to have. But yeah, if you're like in the camp of let the banks fail, let it all go to zero, I mean then everything goes to zero, right? Then you don't want to be buying Bitcoin. You want to be buying a bunker. You want to be buying ammunition. You want to be buying food. But that's a different kind of story, and I think it's a pretty stupid camp to be in. It's like the Doomer camp. It's the perma bear camp, but on humanity itself, it's not good. So there has to be a distinction made. And I'm not cheering for any of that, obviously. I want to make that clear. Like, I think the banks failing and this whole stupid, like basic. I mean, the banks failed in the sense that they have to be bailed out again after making a shitload of money, right? It's just a fucking travesty, and people have to pay for it, which is even worse. So I'm not cheering it on. I'm not happy about it, but just gonna trade basically. And I think Bitcoin is in a good spot. And like Fred said, I think actually it's like a Goldilocks zone that we have to hit, and I think we're gonna hit it. It's the most reasonable zone to be in. So yeah.
Don is up so much he made a bid for Credit Suisse. It says in the
I wanted to bring up inflation since World War II, just because, I think of like, okay, well, when did we have all this stress? And everybody's trying to compare this right now to the inflation that's actually from like the 70s and stuff. And I don't know. I wonder if from a economic impact perspective, like COVID was a really big deal that I think we still minimize a bit in terms of how much it affected the global economy. And in some ways, I think it could have had like similar to World War type of impact, but on a global economy and without the physical war. But in terms of like the sudden shock to everything, it feels more like a World War to me. I'm not trying to compare the two from a societal perspective or anything like that, but just trying to think of like what it could mean for inflation and like how long it takes to kind of normalize things. What's the fallout from it? And people try to like force everything into these things that take months. And I think these things can take years. And what we saw after that is multiple cyclical rotations of inflation that were big. And then also we saw like a radical shift in the societal sense of like what turned into the 60s and then the 70s, and just stuff took a lot happened, and it took a long time for the fallout to like fully play out. And I think that we might run into a scenario where like we just have this high uptick of inflation for the entirety of the 2020s, and it takes a long time for things to get back in order. And, people's buying power has to normalize, and the way the family unit changes and I just think there's a lot to play out. And I think we're just feeling kind of the early innings of the post-COVID world shakeup,
That sounds bearish. I'm just going to ignore it.
I don't think it's necessarily bearish for Bitcoin. I think it's a bit bearish on like overall economic growth,
Yes. Like frothy risk. That's bearish for frothy risk, but we like frothy risk.
That's exactly
Also,
right.
I think you're definitely overthinking it, because looking at the chart you've got, there was a clear range between 0% and 5%. We had a failed breakout to the downside, reclaimed 0%, strong support. So now it looks like we're going to make a stab for 5% and see if we can break out. So that's all you need to know there.
Yeah, well, maybe so.
I actually think it's a reasonable take, like a very reasonable take. The problem that we have is if this takes a while, right? The one thing that we don't necessarily have anymore nowadays is like a insane growth of population percentage-wise, right? The only places where we do have that still is basically Africa, and that's slowing down too. So basically, we don't necessarily have kind of the future generations bailing us out, because it's just going to be less, especially in developed countries, especially in Europe. So you kind of have this shitty situation where we've put ourselves in a very, very bad spot, and we don't necessarily have a shitload of people coming in to save the day, because it's always easy to grow when
you're having babies.
Population size grows. Yeah, it's just how it is, right? Like the more babies people have, the bigger the population that comes after yours. The more people can take care of you, basically. That's where a lot of growth comes from. And we're not going to have that in at least a lot of kind of developed countries. So that's going to be an interesting one. We're in a shit situation and we don't have anyone else to bail us out. So we're going to have to get out ourselves, which I'm curious how that's going to go.
It's a very roundabout way to tell me to go outside and get laid on, but I respect it.
Well, I think that's what you should do.
Oh, it says both of you now. Okay, I see how it is.
have a family, man. I actually completely agree. I think this is one where Elon Musk has been like way early to the longer term trend and one of these like societal problems that exists. Like it's the same, one of these things where in a multi-decade sense, 20 years from now, people are begging for the exact opposite of what's occurring at the moment. Where it's like, okay, everybody's um, anti-immigration and talking about smaller families and all this stuff, and then you realize like, oh crap, we need to panic in the other direction. We need a lot more families, a lot more immigration, and you're going to end up with these like national incentives for people to move to certain countries. And the countries that play it well might actually like recover and see growth, but the ones that don't or get stuck in the mud in terms of the way they see the future are going to just become like a massive rust belt. Um, yeah, we need more population.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because in general, you don't want to overpopulate the entire planet, but you also like the moment your country starts shrinking, it actually becomes really, really difficult to maintain like a good living standard.
Yeah.
Like it's just long term wise, it's just very, very bad for the country. And I do agree, like the immigration thing it's really funny because it is going to turn around.
Oh yeah.
And it's going to turn around massively where people want immigration. Because I mean, you just see it in countries like Japan, for example, where they really don't want too many immigrants, but they're gonna have to, like, they're already in the process of changing a lot of kind of rules and laws because they're worried about the future, right? If you don't, like, if no one's having any children, where's the country gonna go? It's just gonna disappear.
Yeah.
And I think, like, I do not like Elon Musk, but I do agree with you there. He's kind of seeing this before like a lot of other people. So we'll see how that turns out. At the end of the day, like we don't need more people planet-wise, but for a country to do well, it needs more people. So it's an interesting kind of thought experiment where we're just gonna see how it's gonna look when everything turns around, because we've never really had that before.
Yeah. Well, we solved everything today.
Easy.
What's left?
Put us in, the policymakers from Weekly Open.
Hey, I went to Italy last fall, and like that was legitimately my takeaway. I was like, man, this is an amazing country. They should incentivize people to come here and like have babies and like create like businesses and just recruit people to this incredible environment. But instead, at the same time, their politics were the exact opposite, where they were like, if you're not Italian, screw you. And it's like, you're killing yourselves here with these policies. But anyway.
Yeah, so any young Italian women ideologically aligned with Ledger, you know where to find me, please.
Let me introduce you to my friend Cred.
Oh dear, I wouldn't do that to them, Ledger.
I need to get into the matchmaking business. That sounds fun. So shall we finish with ETH BTC dying, or is this going to be the move that we outlined a while back, where down and then up only? Anybody have opinions?
I mean, it still needs to go to the line where where you said you'd capitulate, and I said I would buy.
Yeah, I've got it, Ledger, on the weekly here. I think this is the one.
Yeah, you have a label.
You
have a label.
The upper boundary. The other one is like quite painful, but I think Don is referring to the red line.
The 0.055. Yeah.
Yeah. If it goes there, I think you want to shift heavily into ETH again.
This is what y'all been putting in your other streams. Ledger status pain gap. The ones where I'm not on there, they're like, oh yeah, that's where we're buying ETH, everybody.
Yeah,
that's what your newsletter says every week. This is where Ledger is just crying.
That's why there's no bid on ETH. No, but I think like that's kind of gonna be where the altcoins probably in general bottom out, around 0.055, not all the way down. So like another like 12% to go for ETH, which would translate into like 20-25% on altcoins. I think that would make sense to me. Or if we just come back up over that line, then I'm gonna shift a little bit more. Not like I'm not gonna all in, because the Bitcoin narrative is so good that I actually just don't want to sell Bitcoin. which makes it really hard to buy altcoins, right? Because then you kind of have to make, whenever you buy an altcoin, you sell Bitcoin technically. And I have a bunch of altcoins, and every single one's been underperforming Bitcoin by quite a large margin. And I mean, it's gonna take some low prices for me to increase those positions, because every single position being in pain doesn't make me like super excited to just buy more.
Yeah.
So
Wait, you're not gonna add to your losers?
I mean, I'm gonna add to my losers if they're like super
If they're
deep down
really
where I think their value, but they have to be really losers, yeah. Because at the end of the day, like my altcoin positions right now are basically like, hey, maybe I'm an idiot and I'm completely wrong on this. That like we need a Bitcoin rally first and then altcoins. And I like the moment my mind shifts on that, and I could see an alt season, I'm obviously gonna buy a shitload more altcoins, and I think that's gonna come. Like if you think Bitcoin's gonna go up, there's gonna be a point where altcoins are gonna go on massive runs.
Yeah.
But there's gonna be pain in between, and I think the higher Bitcoin goes, the more pain you're gonna have on your altcoins, because you're gonna get a bounce. Like if Bitcoin tops here, you're gonna get a bounce on altcoins probably, and they're gonna mean revert some. But if Bitcoin goes all the way to 50, 60K, there's a good chance that you're going to sit in your altcoins down 50% against Bitcoin on the relative pairs,
Solana,
on top of what it is right now.
I think people just assume that like it's not going to be as bad as it actually can be, and then they're coping because they were like, oh well, you know, I thought Solana was going to be fine, and it's like still $20 and Bitcoin's 50K. Yeah, and your position of strength, as Cred especially likes to talk about a lot, is it's just so much better if you don't fall in that trap and you kind of preserve your Bitcoin relative buying power for when those plays look a lot more obvious. And right now, the problem that you run into is it's just not obvious. And all this, as much as people like love to speculate on, you know, how hard it is to time alt season and this kind of stuff, like when it's actually time, it's pretty obvious most of the time. Like the flows are immediate, and the mistake people make is then they fade that first move rather than that's when they like choose to take their entries. And it's very tempting to do that. But yeah, what are you drawing on here? Path to all-time high. Yeah,
because they have a bunch of Solana, right? The FTX estate.
Yeah.
So if Sol goes up, good for creditors. Although the lawyers seem to be having a jolly old time with their fees on that thing. So
yeah, and you know,
yeah, and the Solana phone's coming out too, right? Is it this week? Next week? I don't know.
The Solana phone?
Yeah, isn't it like, or was that just rumors? I just like someone pinged me on Discord basically while I was like on the beach, and I was like, "Oh, the Solana phone." So I'm not sure if it's actually true or not.
Can't tell you. I didn't pre-order one as much as, you know, it seemed like a great idea.
Also, notice how unimportant the fact that it was on the beach is to that story, but he still put it there. I mean, that's about as deliberate as it gets.
I mean, a duck on the beach, it's kind of cute. You have to mention it.
I love it. The chat really wants us to talk about Arbitrum alt season / the Arbitrum airdrop.
That's you, Ledger. Don and I trade ICF, Qtum, Neo, and BTC. So
I mean, I think Arbitrum, a lot of people are going to make money off the Arbitrum airdrop. Nobody getting the airdrop is going to make as much money as the people with vesting positions. So just keep that in mind. But yeah, I mean, some of that could flow into Arbitrum season, or we could be having a little Arbitrum season right now, and they all eat doo-doo as soon as the coin comes out. There was a lot of Arbitrum coin stuff going hard recently, so that always makes me a little more skeptical that it'll go harder once the actual coin comes out. Versus like, do you take that win and take it back to ETH, take it back to BTC, and kind of bide your time? I still feel like we're largely in this kind of any multiple is a good multiple, so enjoy and take your multiple. And I don't quite feel like it's a 10x all the things type of world, personally. So I don't know what your multiples are, or how you're feeling on Arbitrum season, or if it's, you know, such a grand opportunity, but I'm not like a big buyer of that thesis of some massive alt season on Arbitrum or any any place really yet.
There you go.
Oh, there you go.
I could just be an old fogey. You do your own research. Thanks for joining us, though. We appreciate it. Good to see everybody. We'll catch you next time. Like and subscribe. Smiley faces all around. Enjoy all your Satoshis when Bitcoin is $1 million. We'll catch you next time.